Hey y'all, I'm back with another video. Thank you guys so much for the love on the last one and just for commenting or for showing support or just facilitating conversation again. I'm just so happy and excited to connect with like-minded people and people who actually kind of have similar beliefs and want to bridge, medicine with mysticism and kind of bring light to these topics in a, regulated, grounded, scientific, and um, very just integrated way. So thank you so much. Today I wanted to talk about, I was thinking a lot about highly sensitive people. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you are an HSP. And if you haven't heard that term, it'll probably change your life because it definitely changed mine when I learned what it was as a concept. I think a lot of us are, whatever you believe in spiritually, a lot of us are born on this earth with different sensitivities, different temperaments, different personalities. And I think some of us really do just have this heightened level of sensitivity. We come onto this earth and there's almost like this evolution of awareness that's already inside of us. And I don't mean to say that from a pretentious way. I just genuinely mean that some of us really, I think, are born with this level of awareness to be able to see through a lot of these illusions and a lot of these patterns that are built into the world. And it really is a gift, but I think that in the beginning of your life and for a long time, you're probably going to see yourself as cursed and you're probably going to see yourself as there's something wrong with me for a really, really long time until you realize what's actually going on, until you realize that this is actually a very unique gift that you have that you can handle and that you can manage and that you can ground it and turn it into something that really becomes your superpower. But it is definitely really hard in the beginning when you have no idea and when you don't even realize that there's something deeper going on here. I think a lot of us that are highly sensitive are just really born with this level of energetic sensitivity that's really hard to shake. So you might feel like it shows up emotionally. So for some people, they feel like they genuinely pick up the emotions of other people. They're around other people and they literally feel what they're feeling. Um, it has been shown in research that those types of people tend to have more mirror neurons. So we have neurons in our brains that are like mirrors and they kind of just like copy the things that the people in front of us are doing or experiencing. And so I find that very fascinating. But those people probably have a lot of those mirror neurons going on. I don't resonate with that as much when it comes to being a highly sensitive person, but that's one form of it. Some people have a lot of physical sensitivities. That's definitely what I relate to. So you might have been somebody that was just born with a very sensitive body. Like your body just freaks out over very small things. You probably look at the rest of the world and you're like, how is everybody existing in this world of like fast food and low quality sleep and constant hustle and constant information and they're okay. Meanwhile, I have one night of like 7 hours of sleep, which is usually enough for most people, but that like throws me off, right? Or I have one night of sleeping under the full moon and it's like my whole nervous system is like recalibrating itself. So you can have a very physical body, and that's something that will probably be very frustrating. You'll probably be somebody who struggles with chronic health issues, chronic illness at some point in your life. And usually that happens at a point where your body is like, okay, you need to wake up. You need to realize, what's going on here, and you need to reconnect yourself back to your gift. So it usually serves as a giant turning point in your process, but it is something that I think is very shared amongst all of us. Another thing is psychologically what happens, I think that when we, oh, actually, to add on to that last point, another thing is also just vibrationally. Sometimes we are also, there's emotional sensitivity, physical sensitivity, but I also think like vibrationally, you can feel the vibes of things. So you might not necessarily pick up on other people's emotions, but you can sense the fear in the air. You can sense the shame that everybody's operating under. You can sense the power dynamics. And what's really hard, what I thought was really, really hard, and what blew my mind when I finally had this realization is that when you're young, you'll think that it's also getting kind of dark here. So hopefully it's not like messing with the lighting too much. But when you're young, you might feel like something is wrong with you because you're feeling so much and then you internalize it and you think that it's all yours. So you're constantly picking up all of this information. Essentially what happens as a highly sensitive person is like you're like this, you know, radio machine, and you can receive really high levels of information and energy, and your body also works as like a receptor that can then transmit an equal amount of energy, right? So your body literally, like your nervous system, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, it operates like this giant like energy vortex. And earlier on in your life, you're probably not going to have the channels, the groundedness, the wisdom in order to really balance that process of reception and transmission. And so what happens is you're receiving a shit ton of information, but you're really like not you're unable to digest it properly. You're unable to make sense of it because also society is structured in a way that doesn't really embrace these sort of gifts or these, emotional intelligence as a whole. And so what happens is you really end up blocking yourself. And so you become very stunted, right? It's like you're taking in all this information, but you're unable to transform it and transmit it into the world. And so you become like emotionally or spiritually constipated. I think that that's where a lot of times we end up struggling from really high levels of exhaustion or even physical illness in general. And that's usually the turning point where something, happens and we realize in our lives like we need to really dig deep. But that is sort of what happens earlier on in our lives. And we pick up all this information from everything around us. We pick up all these emotions. We see through these illusions. So we see how everybody is operating from the space of like inauthenticity and codependency in this like survival level of fear, right? And you're picking up on that, but you're unable to recognize the fact that I'm picking up on everybody else's shit. And so you think it's your own, right? And that's the beginning of the process of internalizing these different energies and wounds. And so then you develop really strong wounds of shame, feelings of like I'm not enough, feelings of I have to mask, of I'm too much or I'm too little, or I have to perform in order to be valuable, or I'm unworthy of love. Like you're picking up these wounds from other people, and then you're strengthening the wound inside of yourself because you're telling yourself that what you're picking up is your own when it's not actually your own. It's other people's shit, right? But you never realize that because nobody really tells you that. So I think that developing that awareness is the first big step when you are on this journey of really embodying your intuitive gifts. I think that that really is the biggest step, is having that awareness to first be able to recognize that there's a level of awareness that you have where you need to develop discernment and to develop the concept that perhaps not everything that I'm feeling can be taken at face value. And that really is like the door to this greater journey and awakening that happens. Another really interesting thing that I think happens psychologically is that because you're processing so much information and you're taking in so much energy at a young age, like at a young age, you don't know how to process that, right? So you develop a lot of these defense mechanisms, and you might end up closing yourself off excessively. You might build a lot of walls in your life. You might struggle to form connections with people. You might find social settings very overstimulating. You might find yourself constantly overanalyzing yourself and all of your imperfections and all of your wounds and all of your, problems and shortcomings. And what happens is you then create this very strong ego structure that's constantly in the state of avoidance or anxious attachment, right? Because that's your coping mechanism. That's how you're basically compensating for the fact that you're feeling way too much. And so that just piles on to this like emotional constipation that happens, and it piles on to you eventually reaching a point where your nervous system is like, okay, this isn't working anymore. And I think that that's what happens to a lot of us. That's definitely what happened to me in my awakening process. I think that I was always a very highly sensitive person. I went to college, my health got out of whack. I started to feel like my identity was shifting. I started to feel like I was losing control. I had this really strong, like hypermasculine ego structure where I was trying to control everything. I had these really strong walls up, and I was really trying to get stuck in this cycle of perfectionism, and none of it worked. And so I finally fell into a lot of really unhealthy coping patterns like eating disorders, developed health issues, and all of that stuff kind of spiraled until I finally woke up and realized what was happening. It's also getting really dark really fast. I didn't expect that, but I'm just gonna keep going. I feel like this is kind of a nice vibe. I like it. But with all of that said, there are a lot of beautiful things about being a highly sensitive, highly intuitive person. For example, the depth of pain and sensitivity that you experience is equal to the depth of joy and peace and connection to higher realms that you can experience. I've noticed in my life that I'm able to uphold a higher frequency. I'm able to maintain at least some experience of joy and gratitude for life, even when I'm going through really challenging things. My mood, now that I've sort of integrated this, my mood doesn't go like this all the time, like a lot of other people's, right? It kind of stays in the middle. And I still always am able to access, not always, but most of the time, able to access this higher experience of joy or gratitude or peace. Another thing that's one of my favorites is that when you are a highly sensitive person, you can manifest very, very powerfully. And again, this is one of those other things that when you're young, it's probably going to confuse you because when you have this ability to feel, you can manifest, right? Manifestation is really the art of how deeply can you feel, how deeply can you embody the vibration of the thing that you are desiring. And so it's very easy to do that when you're a highly sensitive person and when you're super intuitive. But when you're young and you don't have all of your unconscious shit figured out, you might find yourself constantly manifesting very negative situations, right? Like your unconscious material that's unresolved is going to manifest itself. A lot of the fears that you have, a lot of the, memories or traumas might manifest themselves in relationships or different scenarios in your early life because you haven't resolved them. And for a period of time, it can feel like you might be going insane because you're like, why do I have such bad luck? But really, you just have this very insane manifestation ability, and the more that you sort of clear out that trauma and you clear out that negativity and that fear in your body, the quicker you'll get to the place where you can really manifest positive things into your life very quickly. I find that I always manifest people, guides, support, financial support, experiences. Okay, sorry guys. I think my phone was just having storage issues, but where I left off, I was talking about manifestation. Your manifestation skills will get very insane, like to the point where it'll be noticeable by other people. And just the way that you're able to move through life with an energy of ease and an energy of trust in the universe. It's very much like you have a greater ability to really take everything that you've been through, everything that you experience and your level of awareness and turn it into this consciousness of abundance. And it is very much the greatest gift that I think you could ever get. Some other really positive things that come from being a highly sensitive person. I think that once you develop the skills of being able to maintain and hold your ground in relationships, in connection, being able to process your own emotions and your own high level of information processing, as well as being able to exist in front of another person and not get lost in their emotions, not get lost in their beliefs and in their thought patterns. When you learn how to do that, your ability to connect with people becomes very deep, and you almost become like this chameleon where you can connect to like anybody and anything because you kind of see through all of the illusions of everybody and you see into the core of who they are, and you can really mirror people really, really well, right? When you're an empath, when you're an intuitive, you can pick up on other people's energies, and you can, in the beginning, sometimes you overly mirror other people to where you lose your own identity. But when you get really strong in your sense of identity, you can really connect with people very well because you can mirror them, right? You can see the parts of them that are really bright, really beautiful, and then you can mirror that. You can show that back to them and you can help them see the better parts of themselves. And so I think that your relationships become very powerful. I also think that being an intuitive person for a long time helps you to develop a level of wisdom that is really hard to get if you aren't somebody who is constantly in this like introspective state and who isn't constantly processing all of these different like cues and pieces of information. And with that level of wisdom, you can really impact a lot of people. You can really lift a lot of people up. You can inspire people. You can really get people to see, the opposite side of the situations that they're going through. So there's a lot of really, really positive things that come out of being a highly intuitive person. But with that said, you can't really fall into illusions as easily as everybody else. And so I think that, the gift of knowing and being able to see a lot is that you get to learn and you get to experience and you get to really move through life from this like deeper perspective. But the curse is that when you see too much and you know too much, it can be really overwhelming. So it's a gift and a curse. I choose to mostly focus on the positive, but sometimes, I fall into that trap all the time where I'm just like, it would be nice if I wasn't so sensitive all the time, but I think at the end of the day, there's a purpose for it. And my solution to feeling that kind of dissonance within myself is to take that sensitivity, to take that wisdom, to take those lessons and turn it into something so that I can give it back to the world, kind of like turning your pain into your purpose and into your art. And so hopefully, hopefully that resonates. Hopefully that helps someone. Hopefully that might, start conversation. But I'm curious what anybody else's experiences have been growing up or, how they kind of came to the realization that maybe there's something else going on. Maybe, maybe I am a highly sensitive person, highly intuitive person, and what that journey has been like for you getting more in touch with that, especially living in, the world that we live in. So, yeah, but that's all I got. That was just on my mind for today. But yeah, I hope everybody has a great night. Bye.